individualized path. And so I'm going to give you some tools and resources and some ideas about how you can create your own personal path to health and wellness. And heart health is foundational to that. So I am happy to be with you guys. My name is Abby Horton. I'm a certified health and life coach. I'm a Wellbeing ambassador for the College of Nursing, formerly the Honors College, and assistant professor at UA, class educator, and RN by profession. And so happy to share just my experience. A lot of the things I'm going to be talking about today not only come from my clinical experience, doesn't just come from a textbook, but it is, backed by science and research. But a lot of it is my own personal experience with heart health, both for me and for my family. So I will, as always, be sharing a lot of little anecdotal stories, and hopefully something that I share will resonate with you guys. You're welcome to reach out to me. My email is abby.horton@ua.edu. I have two disclaimers. One is this just is for educational purposes and is not medical advice. So we won't be able to answer super specific questions about your health concerns. It's always a great idea to talk to your healthcare provider, mainly because there are general guidelines and recommendations, but depending on your personal issues and challenges and health concerns and lab values, etc., that would determine how that person, that healthcare provider, would give you information. And so we're going to talk in very general terms. So if your healthcare provider has told you to do something or not do something that's not in alignment with what I'm sharing, then definitely heed the advice of your personal medical professional. My second disclaimer is that I'm teaching a nursing class this afternoon, so I am going to have to scoot a little bit early, but we'll leave time for questions, and you can always reach out. Happy to answer questions. So we want to talk about how we can reduce cardiovascular risk factors. We're going to help you identify what those are and help you understand the relationship between cholesterol, hypertension, and heart health, and then talk about healthy habits that can actually improve your overall heart health. So this is a YouTube video. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to have us do it, and it looks like it's wanting to act up a little bit. But this YouTube video here is a walkthrough of how to do what we call boxed breathing. So boxed breathing is where you usually inhale for a period of 4, exhale for a period of 4, and so like 4 breaths or 4 beats, and then inhale, exhale, and you do it 4 times, and it creates a box that you're trying to formulate. And it's just a really great visual for you to think about. Okay, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so it's just helping you regulate your breathing. A lot of times the stress, the anxiety, the overwhelm that we feel is that it may be, kind of a mental or a brain issue, like we're thinking about something that stresses us out. But then once we start having that stress response, it can get into the body where our nervous system starts to dysregulate. And so by controlling our breathing, we're indirectly affecting our nervous system, our autonomic and parasympathetic nervous system, and that can help us reset. Other things that can help us reset are things like running your wrist under cold water. That is a great way to cool down, but it's also a great way to kind of reset your nervous system. Going outside and getting sunshine without sunglasses on, another great way to kind of reset. And when I say reset, you're not literally resetting. It's not like you're pressing a button and you're, shutting down your computer and bringing it back online, but it is often what it feels like when you do some of these practices. So, importance of heart health, I think we probably know that. Global prevalence around the globe, heart health is the number one indicator of, long-term morbidity, mortality. It's the number one thing in the United States that we see patients for, and the impact on overall health and wellness. If you don't have good cardiovascular health, the heart is just a fancy muscle, right? And so if you're having muscle weakness, if you're having fatigue, if you're having muscle spasms, if you're having low electrolytes, you're dehydrated, you're not eating well, that is affecting your heart health. And so thinking about the heart as a fancy muscle can be very impactful in terms of how you actually change your daily habits to improve your just overall sense of well-being. So cardiovascular disease is the world's number one killer. It also impacts, looking at your heart and your brain. So sometimes we think about cardiovascular, we just think about heart, but it also includes the brain. And it depends on where you're having the blood flow issue of whether it's a heart issue or a brain issue. But it's an overall cardiovascular issue in the sense that it's affecting your blood supply, your blood perfusion, how well that blood gets to where it needs to go. And so over 18 million people have cardiovascular disease, which is CVD, and about 33% of all global deaths are attributed to a cardiovascular issue. Over 75% of those deaths take place in low or middle income countries, but we're seeing a rise in this number even in what we would think of as like highly industrialized, highly resourced countries like the US. So it is everyone's problem, so to speak. So risk factors are things like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, overweight, obesity, air pollution, physical inactivity, unhealthy diets, eating like really high processed foods, diabetes, tobacco use, kidney disease, and then harmful use of alcohol. And so cardiovascular disease here, you can see it really, in some statistics, actually is double the risk and the prevalence of cancer. But we talk a lot more about cancer. We've talked a lot since COVID about respiratory disease. And so I think it's really important to look and see how much cardiovascular disease really outnumbers all of these other things that we talk about, even more than those combined worldwide. So the thing that I want you to think about when we think about hearts, I particularly love hearts. Y'all, if you have been with me for a while, the last couple of years, since my tumor and my recovery and just, going through life, I feel like we've really done life together, a lot of us. Tomorrow is my 40th birthday, and I have always had, as a kid, I always had a Valentine's Day party. So I feel like February really is my month. And unfortunately, a lot of people in my family have cardiovascular disease, both men and women. And so Go Red for Women has always taken place in February. And a lot of people don't realize that the Go Red is actually an acronym. So it's get your numbers, own your lifestyle, realize your risk factors, educate others, and then don't be silent. So if you think that you have a risk factor or a problem or a symptom, go get help. So I think that that's really neat for people to understand. My mom had her first MI, that we call it myocardial infarction or heart attack, at age 55. She was a registered nurse her whole life, exercised, ate healthy, had no real risk factors other than the fact that she had a family risk, a strong family risk factor. Um, but she was a healthy weight. She never struggled with her weight like I have. She ate well. She exercised. She was very active my whole life. She didn't take routine medications. I mean, I could just go on and on. She was the picture of health, right? Until she had her first MI at 55. And so then, she really kind of embraced the fact that she was a heart patient and she had to live life a little differently. She is the baby of 7, and all of her siblings have had at least one MI, with many of her siblings having multiple MIs and heart issues. Her mom died of complications from a stroke. And so cardiovascular issues really are very prevalent in our family. And so when we went to nursing school, it feels like years ago, but 20 years ago for me, one of our first classes, they said, look at your family history. That's what you're up against. That's what you have to deal with. And so our teacher kind of morbidly said, what's your risk factor? Like, what are you most likely to die from based on your family history? And I immediately wrote down heart disease, right? And so the reason I went back to nursing school was because I wanted to be able to care for my mom. And I realized in that moment, sitting over at the hospital waiting room, that I was going to probably have a lifelong issue with heart health. I was diagnosed at 12 years old with mitral valve prolapse, which impacts my life on a day-to-day basis. It really does affect your overall well-being. And so many people don't realize that it's a heart valve defect. And so it affects, if you're breathing, it's affecting your health. And so You know, there's a lot of information about chronic health conditions, chronic illness, invisible illness, right? Because most people would look at me today and think I'm pretty healthy without kind of knowing my health history. I would look pretty healthy. And so in the chronic health community, especially invisible illness, it says, I've never pretended to be sick, but I have pretended a lot in my life to be well. And that's really where my passion and my heart comes from. You know, that place of wanting to help others, to educate others, to be in really empowered to take charge of your health. You're the most important person on the healthcare team. That's what we teach in nursing school. And I 1000% believe that's important. So having the education, the tools, the resources, knowing what to ask and knowing how to advocate for yourself is a huge part of why I became a nurse. And it's very personal to me. So heart attacks look different for men and women. And I think that's really important to know. Men are going to have that, you know, typical, stereotypical, like it feels like an elephant is sitting on my chest. I feel nauseated. I'm having vomiting. Um, I am having jaw, neck, or back pain. They are, you know, grabbing their shoulder and saying, oh, this is hurting so bad. It feels like a squeezing tight pressure in their chest or painfulness. They're short of breath. Women present very differently. So my mom presented as if she was having a gallbladder attack. And you know, I have had a gallbladder attack. I had a lap chole, meaning that they removed my gallbladder. And I was pregnant when I had my first gallbladder attack with my very first child. It was amazing. And I thought, I hope this is not labor because I don't think I'm going to survive. And so I don't, Miranda, can you mute whoever that is? And so I thought, if this is labor, I'm not going to survive labor because it was so painful. I felt like I was having a heart attack from that gallbladder attack. And so that is often how it presents, where it's not on the left side of the body, it's on the right, and it's what we call a radiating pain, meaning it starts from the front of your body and goes to the back of your body. And it feels like it's going in through your shoulder blade. That is very common for women. It's not the stereotypical grabbing the left arm and feeling like your left arm is numb. It's more of a radiating pain on the right side of your body typically. Again, that's just one presentation, but they also have nausea and vomiting. They might have the jaw, neck, or upper back pain. They might have chest pain, but it's not always a constant chest pain, a pressure chest pain. It doesn't always feel like something is sitting on the chest. The pain or pressure may be in the lower chest or the upper abdomen. A lot of times it's not listed here. A lot of times people will have GI distress, meaning that they're having diarrhea or diarrhea and constipation that's coming in and out. So that can be a huge thing too. Um, and then shortness of breath is shared, but you also can have fainting, indigestion, so feeling like you're having reflux, and then very extreme fatigue. Of course, people usually look very pale, very sweaty or diaphoretic is what we call it. They look very ghost-like because they are overwhelmed with this pain sensation. So, as we mentioned, heart disease is that number one cause of death, but it's very under-recognized in women. Heart disease is very common and it's largely preventable. You know, we can only override genetics so much, but lifestyle habits really do affect and turn on certain genes. So that's called epigenetics. So I might have these genes that make me more likely to develop heart disease. But the things that I do every day are going to determine how much those genes are turned on, which is the study of epigenetics. And so we're not fated to have the problems that our ancestors, our family have had, but we have to be much more diligent about the areas where we're most vulnerable and at risk. And for me, it's going to be my heart and my brain health. So think about that for you. Is that what it is for you? Maybe you're just here because you wanted a class today, and that's also good. You can benefit from all of this too, because everything that you can do to be healthy for heart disease or for heart health are the same very basic things that you can do to be healthy in every way. And so small daily choices do add up over time. Our heart health affects our energy, our mood, our sleep, our longevity, and ultimately our happiness, right? We can only be so happy, so healthy, or live so long if we're dealing with constant chronic health issues. So the key takeaway or the key message today is that this is about everyday life, not perfection. And it's much more about how we live our life and approach our health versus just a diagnosis, right? Because a lot of times our body compensates really well, and we correct and we compensate. Our organs are made to compensate. Our bodies are designed to heal themselves when we give them the resources and tools that they need, the good nutrition, the rest that we need. And so if we're doing those things, our bodies can compensate for a while, sometimes a long while, until they don't work, right? It's kind of like we were taught in school. Your liver works until it doesn't work, right? Your blood work looks great until one day it doesn't. And it's like a very sudden overnight change. A lot of things in the body are like that because the changes in your body's health, it's very nuanced in that way. So when we talk about cardiovascular health, I've hinted at this, but it's the heart health, but it's also the health of your blood vessels. So there are several risk factors that lead to the development of cardiovascular disease. And I mentioned these, but high blood pressure, high cholesterol, tobacco use, and diabetes. And most of all of that is because of inflammation and blockages in the body. So common risk factors, because high cholesterol creates deposits in the blood vessels, because hypertension makes that pressure really kind of very forceful and can damage the blood vessels, because obesity makes it harder, it constricts those blood vessels, so it makes that narrower for the blood to be able to get through. That's going to increase the blood pressure. Smoking causes inflammation and constriction. Those blood vessels get smaller again. Sedentary lifestyle. That means we're not getting good elasticity in our blood vessels. It means that we're probably, carrying some extra weight. The more weight that we carry in our torso, in our core, around those vital organs, the more likely we are to have health issues. So if you're an apple shape like I am, and you carry your abdominal fat and your visceral fat kind of in your body around those vital organs, creating pressure, you're going to be more at risk factor than someone who's like a pear shape that carries their weight more in their like legs and their lower body. And so knowing those things about yourself is really important. Early signs and symptoms of heart disease include things like chest pain, shortness of breath, fatigue, and swelling in the legs and ankles, and even the hands sometimes. So, stress and the heart connection. When we have stress, our bodies respond because it feels like a threat. So, cortisol, blood pressure, inflammation, our heart rate variability, which we don't talk a lot about in traditional conventional medicine, but is really important in the naturopathic space. So, heart rate variability, how much does your heart change in the, sorry, if y'all can make sure that y'all have yours muted. Thank you guys. So how much does your heart rate move and change with stressors, with activity, with sleep and rest? I did a little experiment with the Whoop band, and my heart rate variability was that of someone in their 70s, based on Whoop's data. And I did that over the break, where I should have been having better sleep, better stress, better overall health. And so I did this little challenge, and my heart rate variability was very poor. It was very low. And so that's one of the things that I'm using that data. We always tell people, know your numbers. Well, knowing your numbers looks like, do you know what your blood pressure is? Do you know what your cholesterol is? Do you know what your weight is? For many years, I did not weigh myself because I had a really unhealthy relationship with the scale. So knowing those numbers, one of the things I was missing was the heart rate variability. I didn't have a device to be able to tell me that. So having those pieces of information, you just treat it like data, right? And you just say, okay, I know the number now. What am I going to do about it? And you create a plan from there. So that's something important to kind of think about as you move forward with your goals. So nervous system imbalance, whether you're saying in the fight or flight response, you're going to fight that saber-toothed tiger, or you're going to flee that saber-toothed tiger, you're going to run away. Our saber-toothed tigers look like Zoom meetings, look like Outlook notifications, look like alerts on our cell phones. We're not really fighting real tigers usually. And And are we staying in those modes, activating our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, or are we in rest and repair? And a lot of people are actually in what I call freeze. So freeze looks like when you say, I'm overwhelmed, I feel stuck, I don't know what to do. So many of us today are not truly in fight or flight and are not truly in rest and repair. We kind of have a foot in both, right? We're multitasking, we're switch tasking, and it's almost harder for the body to have one foot in parasympathetic mode and one foot in sympathetic mode because you do get stuck, quite literally. Your nervous system doesn't know, am I supposed to be resting and repairing, or am I supposed to be fighting and flying? And so one of the things that you can do for your body is to tell it what to do. Your body is always listening. And so at the end of the day, one thing that you can do before you leave for the day is you can say, okay, my work is done. Or you can say, okay, I have reset for tonight. I'm switching gears. Like, give your body some kind of command to let it know, okay, I'm done with my work day. I'm switching off. Like, I'm going into nighttime mode. Or weekend mode, or whatever it may be, because then your body knows, okay, it's safe to rest and relax, it's safe to rest and repair. Having a routine for how you amp up for work, like a start of the day routine and an end of the day routine, can be really helpful for transitions, because the more predictability you give your body, the more likely it is to feel safe. So coming home and doing the same routine, maybe you fix some water, maybe you take a quick shower and rinse off the day. Showers can be meditations. Rinse off the stress of the day and put on your comfy clothes, or put on your workout clothes, or whatever it is, to signal to your body, okay, I'm done. One of the things that I do is I always have a watch. My watch is very old school. It's like a $30 Casio watch from Target. Because I don't want to have Bluetooth on my wrist all day. I'm very sensitive to that. I don't want to have dings and alerts and pings, jarring my body literally all day long. I did that life for a long time, and it wasn't healthy for me. Other people can do it and it's fun. But for me, it was a source of stress. So if I have my watch on, I know it's time to work. If I have my tennis shoes on, I know it's time to work. So when I get home for the day, when I'm done with my work day, I take my watch off, and it's a cue for my body that I'm done with work. When I've worked from home, though, I've noticed that I'm less likely to wear a watch, and it's harder for me to get in work mode. So the watch both signals it's time to get off or on work. So it's very helpful in that way. So why high functioning doesn't equal healthy? Because we can cope for a really long time until we can't, and then we have what the kids are calling today a crash out. So I was talking to one of my younger colleagues, and he was talking about burnout and mental health and all of these things, all of the things I love to talk about with people. And he's like, well, the kids, and he's younger than I am, but he's like, the kids, he talking about college kids, are calling it crash out. And I said, okay, well, I'll have to look at that. So crash out is really just our old school word for burnout. It's more fun, I think, to make a TikTok video about crashing out than burning out. And there's probably a lot of nuance there that I don't understand because I'm a millennial. But it's funny because the thing is the words may change, but the conditions, the factors that contribute to all of this don't. And so high functioning looks like pushing through, even when your body knows that it can't push through. And sometimes you have to test your limits. Like, I'm not saying that we should always have a life of comfort and ease. I certainly always pick the hard path personally. So I'm kind of teaching myself, coaching myself, parenting myself in this moment, because I do tend to push too hard. And so when we do that for long periods of time, it becomes very unhealthy. And we have to look at, where do we need to draw the line and say, okay, here's a boundary around what I can do. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. And that's very important. So the key message is you can't out exercise or push through chronic stress and burnout, or you do end up kind of crashing out, and it's harder to come back from that. So the benefits of heart health are really, I mean, you'll know this: longer life expectancy, improved quality of life, reduced risk of stroke and heart attack, and then enhanced energy and vitality. So, a holistic approach to health really looks like controlling what you can control and forgetting the rest. This is one of my favorite, and it is absolutely my most used graphic in all of my talks because
Hey,
we try.
Abby.
Yeah.
I think the you're not sharing your screen anymore.
Oh, it lost the screen. Okay. Thank you. Well, let us see what we can do about that. That's a fun glitch. I didn't touch it. Okay.
I did see the chat pop up a second ago, but I didn't realize the slides didn't come back.
Well, you know what? I feel like when I'm onto something good, and well, now the screen doesn't want to move either. When I'm onto something good, I feel like that's when that happens. So maybe we're doing some really good work today. So we don't want to worry about what we can't control, essentially. And y'all, unfortunately, that's a lot of things, right? We can control basically our attitude and our effort. There are other things that you could name here, but it really kind of ties back to attitude and effort. So the goal isn't to change all of our negative reactions and thoughts. It's really to filter those. You know, if it pops into your brain as a negative thought, um, let it pop like popcorn or let it pop like a bubble. So that's a common counseling technique is that when an unhealthy, unhelpful thought pops in, like, oh my goodness, I'm so bad at this. I always mess this up. Literally think about that as being in like a bubble and pop the bubble. Just like mentally think about it and just like, yep, I'm going to pop that bubble. That was not healthy. That was not helpful. You're going to have negative thoughts. If you ever figure out mind control and figure out how to not have negative thoughts, like you made your retirement. That is your lottery because it's impossible. But the goal is to change our response. So we don't worry about what we can control. We focus on what we can. So that's your attitude and your effort. So it looks like your actions, your behaviors, what you eat, what you don't eat, who you follow, who you don't follow on social media, how you react, the personal boundaries you set, how you speak to yourself. Unless you have to look at the news right now, I'm not suggesting that you be an ostrich and bury your head in the sand. I'm not suggesting that you be uninformed, but be really mindful about the way that you get your news and your information sources. There's so much going on in the world right now that it's very overwhelming, and we weren't meant to have all of that barrage of unhealthy, sad, hurtful information over morning coffee. Like we just were not designed for that. We have about 50,000 thoughts a day, and our minds only really attune to about 1,000 of those thoughts. And so, you know, the 1,000 thoughts that we really pay attention to are usually the ones that we have every day, right? You get up and you think the same handful of thoughts every day. So the way that you change your filter is through your reticular activating system, or RAS, RAS. And the more you pay attention to the good things, the more that your brain is going to notice the good things. I want y'all to all um, try not to think about a yellow Jeep Wrangler and immediately put it in the chat. Can you? I don't want you to think about a yellow Jeep Wrangler. I want you to think about something else. Like you can put in the chat, what did you immediately conjure up an image of? So anytime we're telling our brain what to do or not do, if we're doing a very visual image, it's going to pop up in our mind anyway. Our mind has a very difficult time understanding what is reality versus what is fantasy. So if we're always ruminating and replaying the bad things that have happened in our life, if we're always thinking about, you know, unhelpful, unhealthy thoughts, negative things, then that's going to cause a stress response. And that is what is most sensitive to our heart health. Yes, it matters if you're eating cheeseburgers every day. Yes, it matters if you're drinking Coke or even Diet Coke every day. Yes, it matters if you're sitting on your couch after work, after having sat in a desk chair all day. All of those things matter, but the stress connection matters the most when you look at the research. So the things that matter and the things that you can control in this Venn diagram, you guys know me, this is my favorite, then that is where you should focus. So there are a lot of things that matter that we have absolutely no control over. And there are a lot of things that we can control, but that in the grand scheme of life don't matter. And we like to have control because control feels like safety, and safety feels like we're okay. And so when you see someone who's like white knuckling through life, which I have lived my life a lot of years like that, it's usually not the thing that they're trying to hyper fixate on and control. It's that something really meaningful in their life feels out of control and they can't control that thing. So they fixate on like counting the number of paper clips at the office. And they're like, someone has been mismanaging the use of paper clips. It's not about the paper clips. It's whatever is going on that they intuitively know they have no control over. And so they're trying to control whatever they can. And we call that chandeliering. It's where you jump to the chandelier, you have this overreaction to things because you're already overloaded, right? Like it's like the rain barrel effect. There's a book called that. It's a really good book. Um, you know, if you are almost full of your rain barrel, whatever that is, like bad food, toxic positivity, negative thoughts, whatever it is going to spill out of that rain barrel if it's already close to full. And most of us are living our lives like that, very over full plates. And I like to tell people, like, I don't have an overloaded plate, I have an overloaded platter. And so it's about how do you engage with those stressors? How do you move forward from that? Because when you lighten that stress load, it's going to be easier for you to sleep better. When you lighten that stress load, it's going to be easier for you to be nice to yourself. When you lighten that stress load, it's going to be easier for you to eat 3 meals a day that are healthy. So that is really kind of the linchpin moment. Like, what do you have to let go of on your platter? I bet y'all have a platter too. What do you have to let go on that platter to be able to move forward with the things that matter, the tangible things that we think about as heart health? So I did update these slides and I created the 5 pillars of a healthier heart. So it's regulation, emotional regulation, stress management, nervous system regulation, all of the things that we've just chatted about. Movement. It doesn't have to be extreme. It doesn't have to be a HIIT workout. It probably doesn't need to be a HIIT workout until you've been exercising regularly for a long time. It looks like walks. Start with walks. It looks like swimming. That's a great, less stress on your joints and your body, but good cardiovascular exercise. It looks like yoga. It looks like Pilates. It looks like stretches. It looks like getting up and moving every hour. Doing 10 body weight squats, meaning you literally just stand up and squat at your desk every hour 10 times, is as effective or more effective than 30 minutes of sustained exercise. It's nutrition, eating a very anti-inflammatory diet. So things like the Mediterranean diet, which is a largely, pescatarian, very plant-forward diet. It might be for ethical reasons you want to do a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet, making sure that you're getting good sources of complete protein. You could schedule an RDN nutrition appointment here at the University Medical Center, or there's an app that I love called Nourish. I just was matched with a new RDN in Alabama through the Nourish app, and our Blue Cross Blue Shield policy pays for it completely. It's super, super easy. I found it, of all places, on Instagram. And I got a new RDN because I needed someone who knew a lot about hormonal health. Now that I'm moving into kind of perimenopausal years, I know I need to make some changes. So she has me on not a keto diet, but a low carb diet. And that's very different. That's very different than keto. It's very different than other things that I've tried. It's called a low carb therapeutic diet, with a lot of components of a plant forward, Mediterranean, more pescatarian. So kind of like fish forward diet. Sleep and recovery. Sleep is foundational. You can do everything quote unquote right, but if you're not sleeping, then you're not resting and repairing your body. Your body repairs while it sleeps because you're in fasting mode. So there's a lot of information about fast and whether fast should be used, especially for women because of our hormones. We fast every day because we don't eat while we sleep. And so that's why breakfast is called breaking your fast. And so breakfast. It's funny when you look at it, you don't think about it like that. So extending your fasting period overnight can be helpful for some. But again, that's very highly individualized. There are moments where I can go through seasons of life where I can do fasting and it's very helpful. There are other times where my body is not able to do that. When I'm having a lot of symptoms from my mitral valve prolapse, that is not a time that I can fast. And I just have to know that about myself. But sleep is recovery. And recovery and sleep are important, but rest during the day is also important. So scheduling breaks, 5, 10, 15 minutes every few hours is really helpful. Connection and purpose. You know, the longitudinal study out of Harvard, the longest running, it's almost, I think, 80 years now, um, that said that, you know, the key to a long, healthy, happy life, those were the three metrics, is that you have community and connection and purpose. You have social, you know, social networking. You have social components regularly in your life. You have people you can rely on. And so, one of the common things, though, that they don't talk about as much when they talk about this study, it's considered a landmark study because it was so big and it was so long, that one of the things that they found that the people who don't have healthy, happy, long, you know, lives is that they are more likely to compare themselves to others. And so there's a popular saying that, you know, comparison is the thief of joy. There's a popular revision of that statement saying that the comparison is the thief of everything. And I do think it is the thief of everything. And that study helps us know that, right? It's the thief of a long, healthy, happy life. Now, if you use comparison to motivate you, and to say, okay, like I really want what that person has. Like I'm feeling kind of envious or jealous of what that person has. If we can stop in that moment and say, you know what, I'm going to be happy for him or happy for her that they have that thing, and I'm going to let that inspire me to go and pursue that dream for myself because obviously, like, I want that for me, that can be healthy. But if we're using comparison as a way to kind of shame ourselves, guilt ourselves, make ourselves feel bad, and make us feel stuck, that's where the comparison is the thief of everything comes in. And that's what affects our happiness and our longevity and our health. So kind of know those things. Also, the reason that gratitude practice is so helpful is because when we practice gratitude, it goes back to that reticular activating system. It helps us filter what we're looking for. So having a regular gratitude practice, I tell people to book in their day. Start their day with gratitude, end your day with gratitude. There's lots of ways to do gratitude, but you can't do gratitude wrong, and that's what is so beautiful about it. The more you practice gratitude, the more you're training your brain, literally training your brain to look for the good things, and that's why it changes your life. So we're going to quickly go through these slides. This is meant to just be a resource to you. This is a visual of what the box breathing looks like. Breath work is essential. The faster we talk, the more we breathe. So when I get done with this class today, I'm going to be feeling a little bit out of breath, like I've taken a brisk walk, but it's because my body is trying to like gear up, hype my body up to be able to talk and present. Um, so having pauses, breaks, meditation, emotional regulation. Emotional regulation, there's a lot of apps that can help you. You know, we have 6 primary emotions. We're sad, we're mad, you know, we're angry, we're, you know, all these different emotions. Usually those are the primary 3 I think of, but there's 6 of them. And there is a feelings wheel. Y'all can go do a Google search. The feelings wheel actually has a lot more emotion. So it has those 6 on the outside, and then it has more going in toward the center. And a lot of times what we're feeling is not anger, maybe it's disgust, right? Like you're disgusted by this atrocity that has happened. And the first thing that you register is you feel angry. Like you see something on the news and I'm like, I'm angry about this. But the disgust comes in and you're like, you know what? It's actually more than angry. It's disgust over this happening because that is relaying this sense of betrayal or violation, for example. Getting down to the actual emotion, the very specific emotion, can be very helpful in terms of emotional regulation because anger and disgust can look very similar, but how you address those things is very different oftentimes. So using apps to help you, they have chat bots that can, you know, help you distinguish what those emotions are and can track them on journaling. You can just do a traditional journal. There are so many things that you can do for emotional regulation. Meditation is really good. Sometimes just letting yourself cry, putting on a really sad song or a sad movie and just letting yourself cry. Like we all have a song that if we listen to it, it might be a sad cry or it might be a rage cry. But I feel like we all have a song that we're like, yeah, I could, if I let myself, I could really cry to that. Sometimes just crying is therapeutic because it releases that cortisol response and helps dampen that emotion. So after about 2 minutes, if you're still upset about something, it's because you're ruminating on it. Your body has already processed it, but your brain is hanging on to it. So and y'all, I can ruminate with the best of them. I'm still ruminating about some things that happened 20 years ago. So there are moments where that creeps up and I'm like, okay, I got to go get my sad song playlist and listen to it. And then set a timer for 5 minutes, but no more than 15. And then after you're done with your cry or, your yell, of course, like anger can be healthy. You just don't want to act on anger. But like, your rage scream or your cry or whatever it is in a safe space, then when that timer goes off or that song goes off, then you're done. You like you're not dampening the emotion. You're not stuffing the emotion away. You're just giving it a container. And you're saying after that is over, can't change it. That's the mantra that the Miracle Morning uses. It's a great book if you haven't read it. Can't change it, right? Like, can't change that thing. How many times could we say that a day? Can't change it. And then you move on, and that really does help your body. So the regulation will lower your blood pressure and improve your heart rate variability over time. And there are little micro practices that you can lead. And you do have to kind of be a self leader, a self coach, right? You have to know that you have to really parent your inner child. We all have one. And emotional CPR is something that you can look at. It's emotional CPR for stress. Like you can actually administer emotional CPR to yourself by doing these practices. So purposeful movement, we've talked about this. Again, it's very simple things. It's not stressing your body out. It's not running sprints. It's not running. Everyone thinks that running is like the ultimate health and stress exercise. And if you love running, you do feel that way. So I don't want to offend you. But it's not always the best option. It's definitely not the best first option for people who don't exercise regularly. It really is just walking 10 minutes after your largest meal. Like make it very simple. Consistency over intensity and movement breaks to normalize your health. So take the stairs, walk around the block, park longer. Campus parking right now is really helping us get our steps in. So that's great. Roll Tide. So park a little longer away. That is all ways to do a purposeful movement because even if you exercise for an hour every day, that's a very small percentage of your day overall. So even just exercising a great exercise program once a day for an hour is not enough for you to have, overcome that sedentary lifestyle. Food is medicine. We've known this for a long time. Hippocrates has a quote about that, a very famous quote. So Mediterranean style eating focus on anti-inflammatory foods, not perfection. So hydration and sodium can play a big role. We need to be hydrated. And most of the time we need some electrolytes in that water, not just plain water. And remove guilt language. Like there are no good foods, there are no bad food. Food is just food, right? And we assign meaning to that. And that can be really helpful because my favorite example is like if you have diverticulitis, which is inflammation of the lining in your gut, broccoli isn't helpful for you. You actually aren't supposed to eat broccoli because that's going to upset and inflame your gut lining more. But we think about as broccoli, we think about as being good or healthy, but it's not good and healthy for everybody. And so that's my very favorite example of that. Like I said, sleep is foundational. It helps with your blood pressure regulation. It will increase your arrhythmia risk, so your heart getting out of whack, which is what I have with my mitral valve prolapse. So if I don't get enough sleep, then my heart is going to be kind of wonky the next day. Irregular schedules and heart strain. If we don't have consistent schedules, our body is strained. And so our body strained, our heart strained, it causes stress. Small wins, consistent routines, consistent, winding down routines, lights, turning those down. If it's dark outside, then that's when we need to be kind of at a slower pace. When it's light outside, that's when we need to be eating and exercising. So use the natural rhythms of the day. And then timing is everything. Some people need more or less sleep. So kind of track and see when you feel your best, the number of hours of sleep. Usually 7 to 9 is what we say. And then reframe, sleep is not optional self-care. It's really vital. And then the connection and meaning. So loneliness is a cardiovascular risk factor. It's not just woo-woo. People who are lonely are more likely to have poorer health outcomes. Part of it is psychological and part of it is safety, right? Like if you don't know, if you have someone to check on you, if you're at home alone and you have an event, you have a fall, you have a heart attack, and you don't have someone in your life checking on you, then you may not get the help you need in time. But then also there's a psychological component. So heart health diet, it's really important to have lots of good, healthy, balanced options like fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, good, healthy fats. So butter, avocado, nuts, good oils. So not seed oils. My RDN really emphasized that of no seed oils, no canola, no vegetable oil. Avoid trans fats. Those are man-made chemicals or human-made chemicals. So they're not real fats, they're preservatives. So look at your label, not just for calories, which is what we're trained to do, especially for women, but look at all of the things on there. Try to stay under 5 ingredients on a label. Even better, if it doesn't have a label, like you don't have a nutrition label on an avocado because it's from the plant. It's not from a manufacturing plant. So kind of think about that. There really is no safe levels for alcohol, but we have GRAS, right? Generally regarded as safe levels of alcohol, and it's done based on if you're male or female. And that's more about how much your body can metabolize. So they're really not great recommendations. And then the Mediterranean diet is a good starting point for most people. The Blue Zones is a great thing to check out. They have a lot of great resources in books and cookbooks. You could get like a whole PhD in the Blue Zones. But here's some things to try. Turmeric or turmeric, whether you pronounce the R or not, can help with inflammation. So can omega-3, fiber, those plants we keep talking about, and the healthy fats. But try to limit sugar, refined carbs. If you're going to eat carbs, they need to be full fiber carbs, FFC, and then limit alcohol consumption, meat consumption. Can be very inflammatory and gives you a lot of exposure to antibiotics and different things, different hormones and chemicals. Avoid processed or fried foods. We love our fried foods in the South, myself included, and then avoid those trans fats. Exercise, we recommend about 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise. So you can talk a little bit, but you can't sing. You're not singing a song. 3 to 5 times a week will usually get you there. And then having a sustained heart rate, so having something you can track that with. High intensity interval training is ideal for many, but not all, and not to start out. Substance use, of course, all substances are going to affect your heart. So these are all of the things that we know not to do. And smoking especially can really change our heart health because of that constriction of those blood vessels. Managing stress, we've talked about this. My favorite things are going to be like mindfulness, meditation, deep breathing, and yoga. Good sleep, like I mentioned, just gives some more information here. Don't just sleep, rest. That's so important. Maintaining a healthy weight. BMI is not my gold standard, but it is a helpful metric for you to be aware of. So how do you feel? How do your clothes fit? What size do you feel you're best at? Not just in your body, but kind of mentally as well. That can differ. Also, having genetic testing can be really helpful for best exercises for your body, and it gives you your likely what your ideal weight is. And so that was very helpful to me as I was starting to exercise. Rowing is a great exercise for me based on the muscle fibers that I have, and DNA testing told me that. It also gave me a metric for my weight, and it was almost 20 pounds heavier. My ideal weight based on my DNA was almost 20 pounds heavier than what my Abby ideal weight is, the number that I wanted to have on the scale. Monitoring and tracking. If we don't monitor and track our numbers and what we're doing, we won't know that we've done a good job at what we're trying to accomplish. So look in the rearview mirror by looking back and seeing how far you've come. And then other considerations, of course, we've talked about these things, the social support, the family history and genetics, mental well-being, going to counseling, getting coaching, wearable trackers, all of those things. And then Absolutely. Have a medical team, have a medical provider if you have symptoms or risk factors. Other healthy things, limiting screen time is essential. We're getting way too much blue light and EMF exposure. It's so easy to be addicted to that now. So many of these other things I've mentioned, but I think that's really helpful to mention as well. The technology piece is huge. And then be disciplined over motivated. Discipline is going to keep you on the pace and consistently every day. Motivation is going to wax and wane depending on, how much we slept and what mood we're in. Discipline is like, I exercise every morning. I'm going to exercise today. Celebrate your small wins and stay educated and informed because things are always changing in especially nutrition and physical science today in terms of physical fitness and requirements. And start with small gradual changes. Laura Casey says small progress is still progress. And I think that's really a helpful mindset when you're trying to change your life. And some other steps to heart health put out by the American Heart Association. And then the wellness basics, really, I've incorporated all of that in, but we have a whole talk that's archived on the wellness site that talks about the wellness basics, and then some other resources for you guys. And then my favorite quote by Arthur Ashe that says, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. You can follow us on our social media. And if there's any quick questions, I'm happy to take those. I've got a colleague. I just heard her shut her door, so I know she has